If you ever thought it was impossible to compete in a crowded online market, think again. We have the founder of Go Brewing on the podcast today. He has extensive experience in building multi-million-dollar online brands that bring you in unreal revenue and continue to grow and adapt as the internet changes. Even you can create the foundation of a successful business online in just 5 minutes. This is Ryan Atkinson, and you're listening to the UpFlip podcast, where we uncover how great businesses are built and the secrets to their success. Joe Chura, founder of the non-alcoholic beer powerhouse Go Brewing, is here to talk about creating million-dollar e-commerce businesses and how to compete online. Joe built 3 successful businesses that all saw tens of millions in revenue. With SEO, e-commerce, and market positioning, he's been able to create companies that not only compete for clicks, but win consumers for life. Thank you so much for being here today, Joe. So excited to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Ryan.
It's going to be great. You have a great story. And I want to start off with your story because before Go Brewing, like I said, you had multiple CEO roles. You got acquired by Cars.com for $205 million. That is a million. And now Go Brewery. But I want to talk about your beginnings, age 20. Can you take us to what Joe Chura at age 20 was doing?
Yeah, at age 20, I found out I was going to be a father. And I want to set this up by saying I had no business being a father at age 20. I could barely take care of myself. And I found myself working on the assembly line at Ford Motor Company in Chicago. And that is primarily because I needed a job because I was going to be a father, as I mentioned. And the only people I knew were my girlfriend at the time, her family, who all worked at the Ford plant. And my first day there, I knew I didn't want to do it forever. There was a lot of discussions around people's tenure there. I call it the countdown. When the common language was, how many years do you have left till you retire? So from day one, I heard, I have 20 years left. I have 10 years left. And it was like this perpetual place where you could not get out of working at the plant. Like it seemed unheard of. Why would you leave there? You have an amazing job. And my dream at the time was to be a supervisor at the plant. That is all I could see. And to get that job would have been unbelievable. But the only way for me to get that job was to go to school. So I enrolled in school in college. So now I'm 21, just had a child, and I'm going to school during the day because I was on the night shift. When you start at Ford, you're on the night shift. You get off, it's from like 3:30 to midnight or something like that. And then I would wake up, I would go to school in the morning. And I started to do that. I started to struggle. I started to get a little behind. But then as I started to get better and faster at my job, building the 98 Taurus, like putting these parts on, I found myself with 15 seconds in between building cars. And instead of staring at these supervisors, I started to read 15 seconds at a time, my textbooks in college. And I did that 72 times per hour, 8 to 10 hours a day for 5 years. And what I realized, Ryan, during that time is my aspirations were limited to what I saw. The most successful people in my world at that time were supervisors at the plant. So that was the epitome of where I wanted to go in life. And it wasn't until I was able to get out of the plant, the marketing sales division at Ford, after I graduated, that I saw bigger opportunities in life. And even at that point, they became constrained to my environment.
I think that's a really interesting perception to have because a lot of times when someone younger in their career, someone just young in general is looking for inspiration, they're often looking to like their coworkers or like their parents. And like, if my parent's only a manager, like that's kind of my ceiling. And I feel like that's kind of similar to like what your experience had before is like a team supervised lead, whatever is like my ceiling, but you knew you wanted to go beyond that and you're actually taking action steps to do that. I want to talk about Go Brewing now because Joe, like you've been in cars for your whole life and now you're going to go do a brewery. Like, how does this idea pop into your mind?
Yeah. So I've heard a lot of people say this on your podcasts. You really have to find your why in life and your purpose. And when I was building these companies, my definition of success wasn't a sale or an ending, a finite thing. In fact, when I was growing these businesses, people would be like, oh my God, don't you just like look around and see what you built? I'm like, no, because business is fickle. It could change immediately. It could change the next day. You can't control a lot of things. So what I was telling people is until I have like an exit or something that can happen that I can't get taken away from me, please don't say that. So that happened. And I thought I would feel great about myself. I thought I was going to like, just feel like, yep, I did it. And yeah, that lasted for like maybe a month. And then I started to feel lower. It was almost like this dopamine rush that I had for building up this company for many years just crashed. And I was like, what is my purpose? So I started to drink a little more than I should. And my father succumbed from alcoholism in 2006, runs in my family. Like many of your listeners, I'm sure, have families and parents, and maybe yourself, you struggle with alcohol. My brother was 4 years younger than me, in the hospital every week, literally about to die, 100 pounds overweight. And I started to really analyze myself. And I'm like, man, I'm not heading down a good path. I started to gain a bunch of weight. I started to get depressed. And in 2020, my wife and I, during the middle of COVID, we're like, we got to do something. Our life had been about, hey, the diet starts Monday. Everything starts Monday. Everything starts next week. And finally, we're like, screw that. So we did a challenge. I abstained for 75 days from alcohol for the first time in my life since I was a kid. I mean, I never went more than like 3 or 4 days without drinking something. So I say to people, you don't know what it's like because you're still always under the cloud of alcohol. I was always under the cloud, even if I didn't drink for a few days. It's still in you. And what happened is that during the 75-day challenge, like 3 weeks into it, my skin started to become clearer. I started to have less anxiety. I started to feel more confident. The only thing that curbed my craving was NA beer. That's it. So I started drinking more of it and went through the 75 days. I ended up losing significant weight. I have a bunch of before afters online. And then I wanted to continue that, not necessarily abstaining or being a teetotaler, but like really controlling my drinking. And as I started to study the non-alcoholic market, I was like, man, there's a lot of opportunity here. And this is like, now this is 21 ideas really manifesting itself. And every day I woke up and I couldn't stop thinking about it. The only issue is the only thing I knew about beer is how to drink it. I didn't know how to make it, but I didn't know how to sell online. And with NA beer, I found out you could sell online. So that really gave me the confidence to take that next step, which we could talk about. Is like, it's really important to find your passion and then take a step forward toward that.
Well, Joe, you just took the question out of my mouth because that's exactly what I was about to ask. I want to first off say, like, congratulations, like getting off 75 days of alcohol is like a huge accomplishment for anyone. Listeners, like, definitely as well. So I applaud you for that. But I want to go to that next step. What was that next step once you identified, like, okay, like I'm actually going to go create an NA brand, non-alcoholic brand?
Yeah. So what I did is, because I didn't know how to make beer, I knew my biggest issue was, one, I had to get my wife's buy-in. She's my partner in this, and she really helped me early on in my life recognize the opportunity in myself. And once she was like, yeah, I love the idea, I didn't waste time. The next day, I started to converse with people. I put a job posting out there. I didn't even know what to ask. I didn't even know what to ask someone, but all I knew I was looking for a head brewer. So I took someone else's posting, I pushed it out there, and I ended up, before I even had a company, because I knew that was the thing. I needed to find a partner that could make the beer. Otherwise, what's the point of creating an LLC and sitting around talking about it? So I did a job posting, interviewed a bunch of people. Luckily, I had a bit of a background to not make myself look like a lunatic. And I found who is my partner today, James Bigler, who's an amazing human. And honestly, at the time, it could have been a complete crapshoot. And I might not be here today talking about the story. But I knew that was the first step in creating this business. And then James was hired on as a full-time employee. We transformed my garage into a brewery and we went to work. And every day my wife would be driving the kids to school. They'd be disheveled in the garage and James would be in there working. And then we started to add a couple more employees and really built it from the ground up. And that was the formation. That was the first step in taking action in this case.
I want to take a moment to thank our listener, Mars N. They said, this UpFlip podcast stands out for its well-researched and informative content that caters to a wide audience. One of the greatest aspects of the show is its ability to discuss topics that can be applied to everyday life, making it both relatable and empowering. Each episode provides valuable information backed by solid evidence and expertise. The hosts do an excellent job of breaking down complex ideas and making them accessible to everyone, ensuring no topic feels out of reach. Wow. Thank you, Mars N. If you've been listening for a while and haven't left us a review, would you consider doing it now? It helps us continue bringing great guests like Joe on the podcast. What I like about this is, like, when you launch Go Brewing, you started by testing your brand on a smaller local scale to really understand like your customer preferences. You didn't go humongous right away. And for people listening for e-commerce, this could be a really powerful approach for you, because before going in all in, you want to see how your product performs with a targeted audience, and gathering feedback and making adjustments early on can set you up for a much smoother and more successful expansion. So definitely keep that in mind for all you listeners. Start small, grow from there. I want to talk about an important step in your journey as well. And that is like the actual brand and marketing that goes into developing any CPG brand. But specifically when it comes to like non-alcoholic brands, I feel like you need to market it and brand it in like a very strategic way, because some people might be like, oh, NA, like no way. How did you guys go about the branding and marketing for a non-alcoholic beer? Those intentional steps you had?
We saw a gap and we analyzed the market with storytelling, and we wanted to be storytellers with an edge. So we looked at all the brands were in the market and we're like, how do we differentiate ourselves? Well, we wanted to differentiate ourselves from a product standpoint by having a best-in-class product. Like, who doesn't want to do that? But the fact that we were making it ourselves was actually a key differentiator, because what it turns out in the space, this might be captain obvious to some people in the CPG space. For me, it wasn't. Most people contract brew out, or they'll contract out their beverages or their products. I didn't want to do that. I didn't even know that was an option. So us controlling the quality of our product was critical. And I wanted to have packaging that had more of a liquid death feel than like a cozy warm feel. And I wanted to tell a story within those packagings, within the cans itself. I wanted to tell a story. So if you look at our cans and you look at the back of it, you scan the QR code, you can actually read about a person that could inspire you. But these people aren't well known. So we're exposing stories of inspiration that you would never otherwise have known these people. And that's kind of really how we started. And that was the ideation of to create our logos and to create Go, the brand itself. And really, it's just kind of our just do it. Like it made a lot of sense to us, because sometimes we overthink a lot of things, Ryan. And the most important thing is that first step in many cases.
I love that. So we have two first steps that you took here. First, you identified, okay, I need like a head brewer, someone that actually knows how to like make this stuff. Your next step was like, how am I going to market? How am I going to brand this? You kind of combine those things and boom, you have a product. How did you guys go about like getting your first like customer then, your first sale? I'm sure you guys did some friends and family stuff, but like your first like actual sale that wasn't like a friend or family.
It's a good question. So we decided to launch simultaneously a tap room and an online store. And then we had no means to get real distribution. And honestly, we didn't want to initially, because when you're first creating a brand like this, I didn't even know what beers would sell. I didn't know what beers would people like. I didn't know the reaction to the market. Like, we just didn't know any of that. So the first thing I would say is like, expose and try to market whatever you can at the given moment. At the given moment, I'd like to look at it as like, okay, we were near these other breweries. Let's be on the consideration set for someone to walk into our brewery. So that was number one. And then all our marketing was localized, but that was never my goal. My goal was never to be a neighborhood brewery. I think those are amazing, but to be a sustainable brewing company for myself, it was to be a national brand, but we needed to start somewhere. So all our content early on was like the taproom content. And then it expanded, then we sold online. Then we started getting customers to buy from us from all over the US. And then we started to get reviews for those. And we started to ask those. We started to have a personal relationship. We started to reach out. And then independent bottle shops started to reach out to us, like very small volume, but important. And we just simply would like go meet with them and we'd ask them questions. And who better to ask than a NA bottle shop who has all the different products? And I would sit with them and I would say, hey, what's selling? What packages are moving? What's the best style we can make? And I would just listen, and then we would create it. And then fast forward a few months, we find out we win the Best of Craft Beer Awards, a gold and silver, 3 months into our business.
You guys have 230 Google reviews and you're at a 4.9 star, which if I see that, that is incredible. So I want to, again, applaud you from afar on that. That is like building a brand that people love. And of course, you're winning these awards and everything. I think a question, like someone might be like super excited listening to this and like, oh my gosh, like I might go do my own CPG brand. Let's talk about like those startup costs I go. And I want to kind of rewind. I should ask that before I apologize. But like, what were those startup costs with initially launching this brand to eventually where you can get it to something that it's award winning?
Yeah. So I was very fortunate by having an exit and being able to self-fund this. And that could be a challenge for people. In fact, I just took our first round of capital a few weeks ago. I've self-funded it to this point. And for us, building the brewery, depending on what you want to do, is going to adjust your costs. So you can contract manufacturer out. In fact, if you're building a non-beer product, like you probably should. So your costs are going to be different than ours. Ours were a lot in building a manufacturing facility, a brewery. Those are a lot of hard costs, a lot of hard assets, lots of tanks. We had to buy a pasteurizer, which was $500,000 just to make sure the beer is safe coming out of it. And we had to invest a lot in what other breweries normally wouldn't. But we also made our beer in a way where we didn't have to take out the alcohol. We just brew it in a way where it doesn't produce a lot. So I would look at your process, make sure you're making it in the most efficient way possible. And you can start somewhere. If you want to start contracting it out, whatever that may be, and then you want to eventually make it yourself, or you want to make it yourself and then contract it out, whatever direction you want to go in. For us, it was a several $million investment initially, and it probably wouldn't have happened the way it did unless I had that exit.
Absolutely. I think that is very like humble of you to say and like acknowledge that like you had a little bit of funds to like play with here, especially to get started. I think that is very mindful of you. And I'm sure like along this whole journey, like you guys have had setbacks, challenges, failures while you've been going Grow Brewery. I know you talked about, I just said how many Google reviews you guys had. I know you guys talked about the award you won, but like early on, can you like share a story with us about like a failure, like challenge you guys had at Go Brewing that kind of propelled you forward?
Oh man, Ryan, there's failures every single day. As I said, this business is very, very fickle. I would say it's just a real basic one. Early on, we're pouring our beer for the first time at this charitable event, and we pour ice in the cooler that creates the kegs, and all the beer lines freeze. Like, we have nothing to pour. So it's just like, that's a minor example of like, what do you do? Now you have this big thing, Go Brewing's here for the first time. All the beer lines are frozen. You just have to figure it out. And we had to bring in hot water. We ended up like only one beer line was somewhat working. And then finally it came back up. Another recent example is Go Brewing was ranked on Amazon as like one of the number one NA brands. Well, Amazon changes their policy overnight and they're like, well, we're not going to allow NA anymore. And our listings get taken down. And you've invested all of this time and effort in Amazon. And we've built an amazing store. We have 20% of our sales are coming from Amazon. What do you do? First thing I did is I was like, all right, we need to pivot, because what advantage do we have? We can make our own products. Let's make a product that's 0%. Let's expand one of the brands that we know are doing well. Let's not lose that channel. Let's not lose everything we built. And let's talk to Amazon and see if there's a way around this. But that's just another example. Like right now, we have an incredible pipeline of orders in front of us that are going to need to be fulfilled by the end of this year. And I am obsessively trying to figure out how we're going to do it now.
I think the pipeline thing is very true, because like a lot of times people talk in business is like, sometimes when these lucky breaks, not even a lucky break, but like some of the times when these come to you, it's like do or die. Like you said, like you get one opportunity with some of these huge retailers to fulfill these needs and actually be able to place the order. I'm sure like that's very stressful for you as like a CEO to actually be able to be like, we need to execute this. And I'm sure it's a very challenging mental process for you to figure out the actual process to fulfill these orders.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different components to that, and it has to be a great tasting product at the end of it, because the customers are not going to be forgiving. They're not going to care the circumstance at which we're creating these orders and we're rushed. And, we're being really intentional now about it and planning everything out, and also planning for anyone listening to like, what do you do if something goes wrong? We're trying to think of that ahead of time. A great thing to think about in life is plan in advance what you know in advance. And in advance, we know certain things can go wrong.
What were some of those KPIs that you had when assessing risk? Because as entrepreneurs, people say like, take these huge swings, swing for the fences, but like they also need to be calculated when you're at a certain stage. So I like developing KPIs to actually build that confidence. So can you talk to us about those KPIs that you built?
100%. And a lot of these KPIs are not dissimilar to what they were at my last company. It's like, we need to show sustained growth month over month, quarter over quarter. We need to expand our channels. So I knew that the future was retail. It's being in stores, being in chains. That is where the volume of CPG comes from. And if I didn't hire an amazing head of sales who then built this amazing team, we probably wouldn't have had the volume issues that we have today. So the KPI was simply, are we getting distributors that want to carry our product, which is very challenging in this day and age? And then are we getting retailers that want to carry our product? Those two things could have been slower. Those two things could have not manifested. Both of those kind of KPIs of like, how many accounts do we have? How many states are we in as far as distribution? How many online sales are we getting? All of those main sales KPIs were going exactly the way we want them to go. In some cases, faster than we even thought, and met our forecast. It's as simple as that. So we modeled what our forecast could be. And as we were hitting it, we felt comfortable taking that next level of risk.
Interesting. What I love about like the space that you're in, just from my stat on the side, like in that NA space between August 2021 and August 2022, total dollar sales of non-alcoholic drinks in the US stood at 395 million. And that was a year-over-year growth of 20%. So there's definitely like trends behind you. And I feel like you guys got in at literally the perfect time to be able to actually capitalize on this.
Yeah, I often tell people, if anyone has watched Indiana Jones and he dives through the cave as the rock's closing in on him, and if he didn't, he'd be stuck on the other side forever. Like, that's how I felt with the timing of how we got into this space.
You got to create your own luck. I absolutely love that. I want to ask you one more question before we get to our fan blitz questions. I feel like just reflecting on your career and like what you've talked about today, you have done Ford, you grinded your nose to the ground in Ford, studying every day, multiple CEO roles, sold, now doing Go Brewery. What time in your life did you feel like you grew the most, like personally?
So when I started Go again, I didn't realize how anxious and depressed I'd been. And that is because the last company that I created, I got to 800 employees. I stayed on as the CEO for 3 years after I sold. We went from 40 million to over $100 million in annual recurring revenue. My day-to-day job was dealing with the thousands of clients that we had and the hundreds of employees. I started not to do anything fun again. And I didn't even know it because it's a slow burn. It's a slow burn. You just wake up and you just do your thing. And I started to lose my purpose, but I didn't know it until I started creating Facebook ads and started doing SEO and optimizing Go Brewing's website and started doing keyword research and started building email flows and started reading books on the best email flows to build. And then I would find myself lost. My favorite time was in the corner. This sounds so nerdy, literally building email flows and building automation. And I could not wait to wake up and do it. And that's when I realized that it was the creation that was everything to me. And I would say that anyone listening to this, if you are feeling lost or you're stuck, get out of it and try something that you think you could be passionate about, because you'd be surprised at how stuck you can be and not even realize it.
Till you get out. I love it. Well, you have created an amazing episode in this today. So I want to thank you before we jump to these Fan Blitz questions for coming on here. But let's go to those Fan Blitz questions because these are submitted from our community. And guys, if you want to join in on world-class entrepreneurs, join in on conversations with Joe, please go to youtube.com/UpFlip and submit your questions there. But Joe, we got 5 more questions if you're ready for these.
Let's go.
Number 1, given a chance, what is the one thing about business in general that you like to change fundamentally?
I would like for people to be able to start. And I think there is this moment we all have where it feels like this needs to be this eureka moment and everything's going to be put together for them. And that's not it at all. If you're waiting for that, it will not happen. What happens is you start to figure things out and you will never know where you can go unless you just begin, make sure you're passionate about it, and then take that first step like I talked about, and then gut check your passion, because entrepreneurship is extremely tough. If you're not waking up excited about it, the chances of you failing increase exponentially.
Yeah, I love what you do. I love that one. What's one sentence you'd like to hear from your employees?
I love it here.
Simple enough. That's a good one. I like it. Number 3, what's the most difficult decision you had to make to fulfill your destiny?
I would say quitting my job or going to the CEO of the last companies that I sold and having a conversation with him stating that I felt like the oxygen was kind of being sucked out of my atmosphere. And I had to have that conversation with him because it was an amazing company and an amazing acquisition. It is everything that could go right. Certainly there's minor issues, but for the most part, the employees were better off. Everyone was better off. It was incredible. But I wasn't being fulfilled, and I had to have that conversation with him after I fulfilled 3 years and did everything I was going to say. But I knew it was for the betterment of not only myself, but the organization, that they could live on without me. And that was our biggest fear, even his, is like, you've built this, like you're part of the brand. But I heard one of your guests say, like, the definition of success is to build a company as if you're not there. He said it a different way, but mine has been that. And I didn't learn that until later on, because initially it was all about ego. It was all about like, oh yeah, they have to, like, I'm here, like this will fail without me. And then you're like, that's the worst company ever. Like, the company needs to succeed without you. That's the definition of a successful company.
That's actually been a mindset shift that I've had here at Space Art Visuals, is like, oh my God, like I need to be doing everything like every single day. And then it's been a huge mindset shift recently of like, you know what, we actually hire people to do that. I don't need to be doing that. But it's better for the company that way. Anyways. Okay. 2 more here. What do you know more about than most people?
I would say digital marketing and the nerdiness of search engine optimization. I love it. I mean, I love it.
I like it. You might need to give us an SEO class then, which would be great. Okay, last one for you, Joe. Which of your earliest jobs is serving you most in your current roles?
I identify today as being an assembly line worker. I'm a blue collar guy from the South Side of Chicago, and I feel so lucky and I'm feeling so much gratitude to have had the career I had, been at the assembly line, worked my way up through Ford the way I did, to sit here today with you on a podcast. I could not even imagine that. But it was all these little steps over time. But it would never happen if I didn't have an opportunity to be an assembly line worker at that plant.
I like it. Well, Joe, I am thankful that you're an assembly line worker as well, because it brought you to the UpFlip podcast. And I want to thank you for being on the UpFlip podcast. So thank you so much for being here. People are like, oh my gosh, this Joe dude is awesome, as I'm sure they're thinking. Can you please let us know where they can find you and learn a little bit more about Go Brewing?
Yeah, you can go to our website, gobrewing.com. You can look us up on Amazon if we're there in some capacity. And then I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, Joe Chura. Feel free to connect anytime. I'm happy to help. I really love to give advice to people and just be a sounding board.
Everyone, that was an amazing episode with Joe. I'm leaving that feeling like electric. Joe was just a joy to talk to. 3 quick takeaways for you. Number 1, be fulfilled in your work. Like he said at the very end, entrepreneurship is so hard. And I can be a testament to this too. If you're not waking up every day charged up and ready to go and being like, oh my gosh, I love doing this, it's going to be a very hard time for you to actually build it. Number 2, I loved when he talked about calculated risk. You need to set KPIs in place to say, hey, if we hit this, I can build a little bit of confidence that we're heading in the right direction. And then you can take those calculated risks as he did and taking investment money. Number 3, similar to number 1, be passionate about what you're doing. You guys got to love what you are doing to be able to actually grow it and do something that you love every single day. It's a huge thing for entrepreneurship. If you're looking for more inspiration on starting your own e-commerce company, be sure to check out episode 141 with Adam Chuntz. Adam shares his secrets on how to start your own product-based business in under 5 minutes. Don't miss it. Stay inspired, and we'll see you on the next time on the UpFlip podcast. Joe, thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you.